Before we begin, this video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. A virtual private network creates a secure tunnel that allows you to safely and privately surf the internet when using unencrypted and unsecured Wi-Fi such as the public one in your local cafe. However, more than that, I've been using ExpressVPN for 5 years for the beautiful benefit of unblocking access to countless shows and films on the likes of Netflix, Disney+, and even YouTube that are not available in my country. As a horror fan who burns through streaming services faster than Freddy Krueger finds you in your nightmares, all I do is open the ExpressVPN app, select a country of my choosing like the US, refresh Netflix, and within moments I can watch 7 Elm Street movies, It Follows, The Pope's Exorcist, Thanksgiving. As streaming services only continue to grow more expensive, ExpressVPN offers a fast, easy, and reliable way to get the most value out of what you pay for. Without ExpressVPN, it's like getting a full bag of sweets, but you're restricted to only eating these ones. Don't be constrained by censorship, access everything. ExpressVPN has 24/7 customer support, can connect up to 8 devices on a single subscription, and with tools to block ads and manage passwords, why not treat yourself by going to expressvpn.com/Ryan to get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. There's a fitting bluntness to the title Bug, not so much in that it's literally the premise, but psychologically, it perfectly associates with the ubiquitous phrase of something bugging you or getting under your skin, that pestering discomfort, that itch that makes you unable to sleep at night, that feeling of a problem eating away at your desperation for peace. Bug is a paranoia-inducing thriller set in a desolate motel in Oklahoma, where a presumed PTSD-stricken war veteran befriends a drug-addicted woman struggling with the disappearance of her son. At its rotting core, it's a film more about devolvement rather than development. It's a toxic, dysfunctional love story about 2 deeply unhealthy strangers finding companionship in a desperate, dilapidated limbo. It's also technically about a bug infestation, but you better get your metaphor hats on for this one, folks. Directed by the late great William Friedkin and written by Tracy Letts, adapted from his stage play that originally starred co-lead Michael Shannon, Bug is essentially broken into 2 parts, a character drama about loneliness and trauma, and a grisly body horror that makes you constantly question everything you see and hear. The film wastes no time setting its squeamish tone, opening with a blood-covered corpse in a grimy motel room, covered in tinfoil and lit by bug zappers, followed by a presumed flashback to our protagonist Agnes receiving mysterious phone calls where the caller doesn't respond. Now, FYI, if you're already sold on the premise, this is your warning to buy out now, because to understand what the film is going for thematically, I have to walk you through the story's use of psychological ambiguity. While the film does not explicitly hide it, it is recommended not to take everything too literally, because whether or not something is actually real, like the phone ringing, is basically the aim of the game here. The film is predominantly shot with a chaotic handheld style, creating this persistent sense of voyeurism like Agnes is being watched, with suffocating zooms and close-ups mixed with faint echoes of Agnes's troubled past, confining us in her distressed state of mind. It's an ugly, dirty, uncomfortably intrusive film. There is no respect for comfort zones or privacy, indicative of the themes of the film. In fact, it doesn't really introduce characters so much as it just dumps us into their situation. We're made to feel like strangers stumbling haphazardly into Agnes's turbulent life, which is exactly the case for Peter, a veteran drifter who's randomly picked up at a bar by Agnes's friend RC, and in contrast to Agnes's defensive grit, is shown to be a sensitive, awkward man, respectfully self-aware that he's just a stranger randomly dropped into Agnes's relatably lonely existence. Their relationship begins innocently enough, but before long, the psychological antagonist creeps its way into their world when they become frustrated by a noisy cricket they cannot seem to find, soon realizing it's actually a broken smoke detector, throwing us off our senses. The film makes profoundly effective use of sound to catch us off guard and instill a feeling of doubt and uncertainty that insidiously Grisly begins to overwhelm the characters. Not only does it use binaural effects to isolate sounds to specific ears, creating tension and confusion as to where the noise comes from, but the sharp, intrusive moments of ambience mixed with silence further reinforces the increasing paranoia of the two protagonists. The mysterious phone calls soon bring us to Jerry, Agnes's violent, abusive ex on parole, who tries to force his way back into Agnes's life, both figuratively and literally, still blaming her for their son's disappearance. There's a lot of relative complexity to the staging of the characters in each frame and their performances as a whole. There's emotional warfare at play all the time. They're constantly battling and defending their own ground, trying to take control of something in their lives, as unhealthy as all their actions may be. In fact, Peter even says as much when pointing out how someone's control and influence can insidiously drive us crazy without us even knowing it, a point that echoes the latter half of the film. As Agnes tries to push her past away, Peter begins to open up to her, initially showing himself to be intelligent and observant, as he seemingly works out that Agnes is lying to him when asked if she has children. When Peter is able to get through to her emotionally, she begins to drop her guard under the geist of trust, and reveals that she stopped looking for her son several years prior, but still searches for him in her sleep. Agnes never let go, even alluding to some flicker of hope that he's still out there and will one day come home. Much of what you learn about the characters comes from small tidbits of fractured information that you have to piece together for yourself, thus sustaining a sense of needed mystery. For example, Peter alludes to having a strict, bubbled upbringing, hence his own initially defensive demeanor, and his time in the military left him resentful and disillusioned when he realized he was simply conditioned to be a cold-blooded killer for a system willing to discard him when he was no longer of use. However, there is more to his story of being backstabbed and left to rot by the military when the bugs begin to bite. After a night of sexual shenanigans superimposed over bug reproduction, Peter is bitten by a bug, causing him to go on the hunt for more while Agnes's phone begins to ring, assuming it's Jerry. While Peter acknowledges the call and picks it up only to hear static, if you think it confirms that the calls are real, well, here's the thing about the second half of the story. They begin to share in the same paranoia. In a twisted way, it's paranoia that actually brings them together, especially after Peter reveals that he's apparently on the run from the military for the most batshit insane reason. Fucking brace yourself. According to Peter, the reason he went AWOL from the military is because he was the victim of experimental biotesting, and the phone calls are not Jerry, but the government trying to track him down after they implanted egg sacs in his body, which caused the room to become infested with bugs. Yeah, the sudden shift in his demeanor is like whiplash, but strikingly, it sows just enough seeds of uncertainty that what he's saying may not be entirely false. Now, for clarity, I will give you my definitive yes or no answer as to whether this is all real or not at the end of the video, but I want to keep instilling just how fiercely the film plays on your expectations, with constant twists, turns, ambiguity, and that overwhelming sense of doubt. Again, playing on your senses, you actually begin to hear faint helicopter sounds approaching, which, like with the phone ringing and crickets, makes you think it's possibly all in the head of an unhinged conspiracy theorist living in a delusion, but then the room begins to visibly shake as a helicopter gets closer. However, the next day, there are no helicopters in sight, so maybe it is just the paranoia becoming more severe, but the thing is, we never truly see outside the parameters of the motel room. They become increasingly isolated from the outside world, and instead we find them covering the room in bug strips while Peter tests his own blood, searching for bugs that, by the way, you never physically see. Eventually, Agnes's friend RC tries to rebuke his increasing theories that the bugs are genetically engineered to resist poison sprays and they feed on blood after burrowing under the skin, and RC tries to take Agnes away out of fear for her safety. Yet the problem is, Agnes becomes so convinced by Peter's theories that she believes she can see the bugs as well. She turns on RC and believes that Peter is the only person she can trust, and both of them begin to enable each other's paranoia, with RC indirectly reinforcing it further when she explains that a mysterious doctor was asking for Peter. I even think Peter begins to take on characteristics of Jerry's controlling demeanor by gaslighting Agnes into thinking he's helping her, becoming more unstable and potentially violent, leading to one of the most distressing scenes of body horror I have ever witnessed. So, there's this very innocuous passing comment made by Peter that you'll likely forget. It happens very early in the story, long before any mention of bugs, paranoia, or even much of a rapport built between him and Agnes, where he claims to have an unending toothache. Well, this comes back as an aggressively harrowing Chekhov's gun, where he believes that the eggs are buried under his filling, and taking a pair of pliers, agonizingly and prolongedly tries to pull out his tooth, eventually finding a sixth sense of relief when he's able to apparently confirm his suspicions when Agnes sees the bugs under his microscope. Again, I have to continually stress that while we feel what they feel, we never see what they see, but that's still not to say it doesn't exist, even if it is strongly to almost absolutely suggested to be all in their heads. And if things haven't unraveled already in your perspective, trust me, these final 25 minutes are fucking insane. British yourself. Their motel room is soon wrapped entirely in tinfoil and lit only by the nauseous light of bug zappers, calling back to the cold opening shot. The doctor mentioned by RC finally shows his face and barges into the room with the help of a genuinely concerned Jerry, who's then asked to wait outside, with Agnes explaining the bug situation and the use of foil being a means to, I swear to God, scramble the bug's inbuilt signal transmitters. Yes, it's true, Peter is not lying when he says he's being chased, but his reasoning does not add up when the doctor explains that Peter is an institutionalized soldier suffering from violent delusional parasitosis, a belief that parasites, spiders, snakes, and other creepy crawlies infest the individual, resulting in his utterly deranged story. Agnes does attempt to rebuttal the doctor with evidence of the bugs on herself, but he knows she's too far gone to reason with, so instead humors her shared paranoia, even offering to remove the egg sacs if she helps turn Peter in. Now, what's so interesting about this scene is how it still continues to keep you in the paranoid headspace of the characters by framing the Doctor as brooding and sinister. You still never know the true extent of what's going on. The Doctor could still have nefarious motives, but it becomes increasingly difficult to believe in Peter's side of the story when his conspiracy theories get increasingly far-fetched. It certainly doesn't help the Doctor's image when he then attempts to manipulate Agnes into helping him by claiming to know where her son is and can bring her to him if she exposes Peter, but before long the Doctor gets what he wishes as Peter emerges to interrogate him before viciously stabbing him to death. However, don't worry, it's okay, it's not actually murder, because Peter reassures Agnes that the Doctor is a synthetic robot and the American elites are working with the Nazis to make a surveillance biochip to control the people through technology, economics, the mainstream media, and religion, and the People's Temple were the test subjects until Jim Jones, yeah, that mass-murdering motherfucker, found out the truth, so the government had him and his people killed, and Tim McVeigh, the Oklahoma bomber, and Ted Kaczynski, the fucking Unabomber, were also subject to the same experiments as Peter, and it all goes right to the fucking top. I am not kidding, that is genuinely a summary of Peter's brutally intense 5-minute monologue. And to be honest, all he's missing is some mention of lizard people for this to come full circle. On the one hand, it's darkly hilarious just how absurd the entire thing is, but on the other, spend 5 minutes on the internet and you will find people who absolutely will buy into this crap. And yet, it still continues to get more insane. Peter further convinces Agnes that her son's disappearance was part of the government's plan to bring them both together to spread the infestation, but the only thing that's truly spread is Peter's conspiracy theories onto Agnes, who Peter then coaches into coming up with her own false narrative. It's a painful scene that pays off Agnes dropping her emotional guard to Peter as she recounts the moment of her son's disappearance and becoming distraught at how the police could not help her, and now consumed by the delusional desire desire for reason, conceives that Jerry was hired by the government to kidnap him, eventually causing her predicament, and it was Arcee who conveniently brought Peter into her life while Jerry was paroled at the same time, thus a coincidence at his sudden arrival. It is both a ridiculous and tragic story where everyone is conspiring against them, and what's so harrowing is that it actually brings Peter and Agnes closer and closer together. They share in their unique problem, this fear, this supposed truth that only they can understand. What follows is Agnes coming to the conclusion that they were brought together to mate to release a spawn of baby bugs because Peter is the host to a meal bug and she is the host to the super mother queen bug. Believing the government has arrived to take their babies and in a borderline feral state, they decide they must destroy the bugs and themselves, soon dousing the entire room in petrol and lovingly embracing as two lonely, broken souls brought together in their pain, immolating themselves as Agnes gives one final gasp, which could be interpreted as a moment of regret. While the story is open to interpretation over what's real and what's not, in my opinion, it's entirely a delusion, and the subtext for the infestation is how susceptible emotionally damaged people are to finding answers to their uncertainties and pain, regardless of how much further it detaches them from reality. Agnes only ever desired closure for her son's disappearance, and the tragedy is that she'll never have it. But at the end of the world, she may have at least found a glimmer of hope in Peter, someone who not only feels her pain and loneliness, but is someone she can trust and hold on to as her life drifts further and further into the void. And with that, I not only highly recommend Bug, but also Freakin' and Let's second collaboration Killer Joe, a sort of southern gothic crime thriller that further plays on gritty, ugly, dysfunctional characters. And like I said at the beginning, it's a story that's much more about devolvement rather than development. It's much more plot-centric than Bug, where it's obviously character-centric, but still one I highly recommend. But anyway, until next time, stay safe, stay away from Oklahoma, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.